So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview, broadcast and recorded live on blogtalkradio.com from the new media and American League Baseball capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. If you could afford to stay at any hotel on a business or pleasure trip, I can't imagine choosing anywhere other than a Four Seasons hotel or resort property. Anywhere else. I just can't imagine it. Now, granted, I'm a little prejudiced. In 2007, I had the good fortune to spend a month doing interviews and background research for Isadore Sharp, founder and chairman of Four Seasons, as he finished his autobiography, Four Seasons, The Story of a Business Philosophy. This assignment afforded me a behind-the-scenes look at how the Four Seasons became the ultimate brand in luxury hotels and just how seriously the Toronto-based company takes the happiness of its guests. I also spent time with many of the chain's executives and managers from around the world and learned firsthand of the pride they take in the brand. But best of all was the time I spent with Mr. Sharp himself and his lovely wife, Rosalie. Everything they do with class. They're kind, warm-hearted, and delightful dinner companions to boot. And now with publication of his book about the making of the Four Seasons, they're both acclaimed authors. Isadore Sharp, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for that very generous introduction.
Well, you're a good guy. What can I say?
Well, thank you. Nice to see you. Nice to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you. Congratulations on publication of the book.
Thank you. As you know, it's been a long time in coming, and glad to sort of get it launched, so to say. But hopefully it's well received. And as you know, the main reason was for the really many people in the company, for their benefit. 35 plus thousands who presently work in the company, and for the many other thousands who will be joining the company as we continue to grow. So I thought, it's because I think if they can understand how and why we got to where we are now, it gives them a better sense of how they can deal with the future. And I thought I better get down now while I can still recall some of the events of those early, those early decisions and how they came to be.
Well, I somehow doubt that your memory has changed much in a year, but you're a pretty sharp fellow last year, so I'm guessing you're just as sharp now.
Yeah, thank you.
I tell you what I'm wondering. You've built all these incredible hotel and resort properties, and you can pull up to them in the car. You can see them. You can touch them. They're incredible. But a book is different. You actually hold your life in your hands now with a book. How does it feel?
Well, as you know, we were talking. It was quite an experience. Having to go back and recall things I haven't thought about in 40 years. So in that regard, it became quite interesting to think of things that I did when I was 25 and 30, and wondered why in the world did I ever think I could do that? Because even today, with the strength and breadth of the company, there was some of those things that I wouldn't even attempt to do today. But I guess that's what you do when you're naive and don't know the pitfalls that you might be in front of you. You just go ahead. So that's what it did for me, is to recognize that many things are possible if you keep that concept in mind.
Your dad was very important to you in your early business career. Can you tell folks a little about him?
Well, he was an unusual man, in as much as he came from poor beginnings. He's an immigrant. Have struggled through early parts of life trying to live through the pogroms, and then the early parts of trying to build a country in Israel. So he came here with what like most immigrants, prepared to work as hard as he had to put food and shelter on the table and over his family's head. So he was a very quiet man. He never raised his voice or ever raised his hand to any of the four kids. And he was as I say, probably the most tolerant man I've ever met. No education, but he really bridged every generation gap simply because he wasn't judgmental. So whether it's his great-grandkids who would talk to him about something, he would have such an open mind. And he was quite a religious man, but never forced us to follow his dictum. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, he gave me an understanding of how to behave in life, how to accept people for who they are and not try to, determine who's worthy or not. And I guess you learn that not from what he says, because it was never a speech, mm-hmm. but from, you see how people are, how they respond, and over, I guess, a lifetime, you acquire those things that you do respect and admire. And he had that impact on everybody. I mean, he was a man loved and respected by anybody who knew him. So you don't get that unless there's a special quality inside. He lived to 102 and had a loving life. And he admired and loved his wife, my mother, like no other love could ever be. So, you have, if you're sort of surrounded with that type of personality, you, by osmosis, I guess, you're learning things.
Did he press you to be one thing or another as you grew up and went into business?
No, never. Never ever suggested one way or doing one thing. There was one time he told me when I had this opportunity, very young, and I was approached by ITT that they wanted to buy my small company and have me come and help them build a hotel company. He said something that I'm not sure if that's why I made my decision, but he said, you've never worked for anybody. And that's all he said. And he was right. So I did not sell my company.
How'd that work out for you?
Well, like everything else, you put it all in a basket, and you got to carry what's in that basket. The good things, just the choices you make that work, and the choices you make that don't. But they all come together to be what they are today.
Now, before you got to the point of not doing the deal with ITT Sheraton, you worked in your dad's company, and I seem to recall there came a point where he realized that you were running the company, you were pretty much running the company, and that you were probably doing a better job at it than he, and he was gracious enough to let you take over.
Yeah, I don't know. I to this day, I can't really understand how and why, but I had an education. Wasn't a good one. I was always a terrible student, but I think he just from his life would just assume that, if you've gone to school and you've graduated and you've got an education, you must know things that he wouldn't know. But he was such a generous person that if he saw you doing something, he wouldn't stop you. So I guess my approach was I would just go ahead and do things, and he slowly was able to say, fine, that's what you want to do, I'll watch you. So he, very generous. It doesn't, usually it's very difficult. Now remember, it's a two-man organization. I'm not going into a company.
Right.
And it's very difficult for children to work under their parents. But this was very different. I never had any trouble with it. I think it was a mutual respect that seemed to prevail. And
people who are hearing you speak maybe for the first time and are wondering, is he is he really that easygoing? Is he that easy as he sounds? And I just want to say from experience, and everyone that I ask the same question to many people. Yes, I think that the truth is that Isadore Sharp is a very relaxed, easygoing guy. He takes his business very seriously, but as you hear him, this is how the man is, folks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, how did you get into the hotel business? I mean, I've read the book, so I'm asking it a little rhetorically, but how did that get started?
Well, as I say, I was a builder. That was my dad was. So we were building houses and apartments, and that's the way I came into the work world was, growing up working on construction sites and really enjoying it. I loved the physical part of working outside and with strong, hard-working people. So I just got interested by building a small motel for somebody. That it intrigued me. How did he think this was going to work? And I sort of thought, gee, maybe that's a good idea. So I tried to put together a small hotel deal. Now, I was only doing it as a real estate play. I wasn't doing it in any way thinking about going into the hotel business. I mean, I knew nothing about the business. So my approach to trying to figure out what to build and how to operate really was from a customer's perspective. And you would come up with the same things. What would a customer find of value? What would they consider to be useful? So my approach right from that very first hotel was based upon the 101 of business. What do you have to do to attract and please customers? And that strategy hasn't changed to this day. But I was only doing it as a real estate deal, not in any way thinking of going into the hotel business. And I didn't think about going into the hotel business until about 10 years after that first hotel. And so it was a slow, I call it an evolution of opportunities. And then I came to quite enjoy what the hotel business was offering. So, so it was, as I say, a stepping stone approach to trying something at work, the next one did the same thing, and it got to a point where I thought I saw what I thought I could do quite well, and then gave me that, I guess, desire to try it.
Now, the first Four Seasons, I think, opened in 1961.
Right.
And, right?
Yep.
And was actually a motor lodge. And no disrespect, because you know how much I like you, but it kind of looked like what we now recognize as a Courtyard by Marriott. How
it probably, yeah. It was. It was a beautifully designed concept. But it was a motor. It was called the Four Seasons Motor Hotel.
Yeah.
My idea was to take the concept of a motel, which was built, on the highway, easy access to drive up and check in, and combine it with the attributes of a hotel, which was more service if you wished it and more facilities. So that was the concept of what I was trying to put together as an idea that might work. Now, if it was such a brilliant idea, then you tell me, why did it take me 5 years to convince people to invest in it? So it didn't happen overnight.
There were many turning points. I know from reading the book and from talking to you and the people around you. There were a number of turning points over the years that made Four Seasons what it is today. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ones that were very, very important to building this company?
Well, and then again, going through the history of recall, I can identify what I call now the four key strategic decisions that really formed the foundation of the company. They were, you'd classify them as the milestone objectives. But those occurred over a 25-year period. And each one was to support the one before. So, as I say, the first hotel took me 5 years, but it opened in 1961. And then some years later, when we opened and were running the Inn on the Park in London, and this was the third hotel. And that was, call it my crossroads, where I really felt that I think I have an idea that I would like to work on. And that's when I would make that first strategic decision, which was to only operate medium-sized hotels of exceptional quality and to be the best. Now, the first part of that's no big deal. If you just want to operate one type, that wasn't new. But to say we're going to be the best, that was a stretch because, now I didn't say we were the best. But
you wanted to be.
Right, but it was based upon fact because when we opened and operated the Inn on the Park in London, we were up against the most famous and some of the best hotels in the world. Dorchester, Grosvenor, Ritz, Claridge's, Connaught, Savoy, Berkeley, all of them. Mm-hmm. And we beat them all. We had the most successful hotel in London. It was voted the best hotel in Europe in 1970. So my thought was, if we could do it there on their home field, why can't we do it everywhere? And that's how I base that we're going to be the best. Now, that, of course, begs the next question, well, how do you determine that? What's going to make you better? And I said the same thing that made us better in London was the quality of our service. We approached it very differently than the way the other hotels, we had what I call class without a formality. So that was the second major decision, that we were going to define ourselves not by, as I said before, the architecture and decor, but by the quality and consistency of our service. That again led to, well, how are you going to do that? And that then became this most important decision that the company has ever made. And that's when we defined how we were going to operate to create a work environment that would make our employees better able to do their job than other hotels. And we wrote out our mission statement based upon that very simple, profound statement of the Golden Rule. Mm-hmm. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And we built that into how we as a company would operate. That's how we would treat our people, and that's how we expected our people to treat our customers, our suppliers, our business people. So that really set the stage of what defines Four Seasons today. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say it became the most important decision. So if you look at, and we now call those, and the fourth one, of course, we decided to make the hotel and, develop a management company as a business model and build a brand name that would be more valuable than the ownership of real estate. Mm-hmm. So those, in reconstructing the history, are what I can now define as those are the milestone objectives, the most important decisions, and then the filling in between those, what we call the four pillars, were really those stepping stones of how you got from one point to the next.
Now the Golden Rule, we can't possibly dismiss that in a couple of sentences. It's easy to say now in some regards because it's become the culture of the company, but at the time, it was a little tougher. You had people around you, your direct report managers and executives at the size the company was, who didn't necessarily all agree that was the way to run a business.
No, they felt it was that's what you do in a philosophy class. And that was a difficult time because if people aren't with you, they automatically are against you. So that became a very personally distressing time in my business life. But I was convinced this is the only way we're going to be able to compete with people who were bigger and better at what they did than we were. We were going to do it by creating it was a theory. Could we create a highly qualified, competent workforce based on an ethical credo? Now, that's where these people said that nobody's going to buy into it because nobody's going to really care. And that's when we parted company with many people in the company. But there were many others who did buy into it, who did say, yeah, I like that. You know, if that's the way you're going to treat me, I have no problem treating other people the same way. So it slowly got roots. And it got roots because it's a universally belief system that most people really adopt. Because, if you think about your own family life and how your parents aspired to raise you in a manner which would make you the best person you are, and I'm sure it's the way you are trying to raise your children, giving them values that they can rely upon. So the principle it got meaning, but it has to be used without compromise. You can't say it. You got to walk the talk. And that's where we had differences of opinion. People would say, okay, I can say it, don't worry about it. But their actions wouldn't follow their words.
Well, a lot of times you'll find a company that says something, but doesn't actually, the company doesn't believe it or say it. So the employees and, the people out in the trenches, they know they can get away with it because the company doesn't believe it. The difference that I found, not just from talking to you, but from talking to so many people working for you for such a long period of time, is that you do walk the walk, that the company pretty much puts its entire value in living by that golden rule.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. And it's not me now. It's everybody.
Yeah.
We've got thousands of people now who have bought into this in a way that gives the company enormous breadth of strength. Because it is, and when I say it was a theory, but now because of the actions of so many people over so many years, that theory has become a fact. It does work. It gives you a workforce that truly differentiates the company. And not in an arrogant way, not to say we're doing it better than others, we're just doing it more sincerely. It's a legitimacy that really people see our employees do mean to try to do their best. It's not smile and have a nice day. It's a very sincere effort on everybody to try to support each other and follow through on what their responsibilities are.
There are two words, I think, that sum up what Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts is about. One, of course, everyone would point to luxury, but of course, then there's service. And I think that one of the things that many of the reviewers of your book, and no doubt a few of your competitors, have really focused on in the story of a business philosophy, is the Four Seasons morning meetings that are discussed. And if you're listening to this in a bookstore, it's chapter 30. I'll get right to it. These meetings, which I sat in on several of them, they're held in every hotel with top management and department heads. Can you kind of take our listeners through what those meetings are about and what takes place in them?
Well, it's to you understand what your day is going to be, and therefore they're reviewing everybody who's coming into the hotel who might have special needs or loyal or special requests that's been made through a meeting planner or whatever. So everybody's sort of brought up to date on what's happening, and then there are the glitch reports that
Yep.
People want to know, well, what happened yesterday? Did everything work? And not everything works. So they wanted to address those things that might have fell between the cracks so we can correct it, or other people can be aware of it so, the person who did have a mishap, the doorman might say, sorry, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, I understand this happened. And it's getting everybody to recognize that we will make mistakes. It's inevitable. But it's what you do about them, and not to try to sweep it under the carpet. Come forward, and that's what these meetings are all about, is to say, let's make sure we all understand what our problems might be that day. So it's a very open, it's not a long meeting. These things don't take, nothing more than an hour, I guess. But it's a very open way of making sure that everybody's familiar with what the task of that day or that week is they're going to encounter. So it's preparation. That's the whole idea of execution is nothing more. If you're well prepared and organized, execution becomes quite, simple.
The glitch reports are interesting because people, employees at Four Seasons, that if they screw up or if they see something that's wrong, they're encouraged to come forward, either acknowledge a mistake or point out a fault, because Four Seasons wants desperately to correct those things. They don't want to leave things lingering. They don't want to, if a guest reports a problem today, they don't want that problem to exist tomorrow. Is that?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Understand that we're all there to make sure that the ability to perform at the level we're talking about, meeting every guest's expectation every time, can only be achieved if it's a complete team effort. If everybody in the hotel recognizes their job is essential to the ultimate outcome. One slip that might be a person working in the kitchen cleaning and washing dishes, if a chipped glass is not taken off that line and gets on a dining room table, that's a problem. So everybody realizes it's not the position of power that counts. It's everybody's position counts. And it truly is, we all are part of that effort to make that guest experience what we call zero mistakes, or 99% in terms of guest satisfaction is just not good enough. So we're all looking for that elusive goal of perfection, which is always a receding goal.
And for Four Seasons employees, the morning meeting, the glitch report, a company that has grown at the pace that this company has and has expanded and built hotels pretty much anywhere that the imagination can go these days, that's an opportunity for Four Seasons employees to be noticed, do the right thing, and have the opportunity to grow within the company, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have a policy that we adhere without ever compromising. It's promotion from within. So if jobs are posted and everybody is available who can, whether it's getting visas or getting languages, but the only way we can grow is to continue to attract the brightest and the best and to retain the brightest and the best. So it's the combination of both that gives us this army of people who really take great pride in the roles they play, whatever that role is. Right? I'm often reminded that, the person might be working in whatever job they are, and they say, well, what do you do? And they all say, well, I work at Four Seasons. They don't say I'm the general manager at Four Seasons or I'm the doorman at Four Seasons. It's just, that's their title. They carry that, I think, with pride, because that's what they built. Remember, this company is where it is today because of the efforts of many, many people, and they know it. They all know that they've participated in making something better than the competitor. And so it's not anything we say or what they read in the newspapers. They see it every day.
One of the other points I want to make about and ask you about the morning meeting is Four Seasons is known for attracting, in terms of its guests, celebrities, well-known people, newsmakers, both, there's the Hollywood types, but there's the business leaders, and I'm not going to ask you about any of their names. I know that you're very sensitive about that, but in that morning meeting, another thing I found very interesting is to hear the discussion about how special needs are being met and ongoing guests and guests who are coming back. There's a whole layer of people, particularly in New York and L.A., Paris, who deal with these higher need guests. I don't know if I'm describing them.
Yeah. High maintenance.
High maintenance, there we go.
Yeah, no, there are, and that's really what our job is. We don't try to be judgmental on what people's requests are. If they need that, we're going to try to get it for them, and it's their choice. And our people go to great extremes sometimes to meet those requests. But that's that's a bit of a challenge too, and it literally is an incentive when an employee gets a request that might be outrageous, and they can do it. That sense of satisfaction of having done something that is, firstly, it's appreciated because the customer knows when they're making demands that are difficult. Mm-hmm. So, look, these are things that have grown slowly over the history of the company. Today, we get the benefit of what experience has taught us. And I think that's why the book can be helpful, because history really gives people a sense of their roots. And, it's a connection to the past and a link to the future that really becomes an unbroken chain. So the people now can, go back. That's why I say it'll be to the benefit of the people in the company that they'll see those steps that we've taken, those that worked, those that didn't, but the ones that didn't still helped us move forward.
Mm-hmm. Now that's the pro of writing a book, but the negative is that you've now published all this information that your competitors can. Do you think it's going to help them to know this stuff, or do you think they're not going to get it anyway?
I think they'll see that it does work because they can see it's worked for us. But it really takes a discipline and a belief that you're prepared to stick with it over a very long time. So I don't think we're giving secrets away, because whatever it is, we've got a 40-year head start, and we don't have to change anything to make it work. So I think we're going to continue to, as I mentioned, what we put out there is that perfection really is an ever-receding goal, because once you get to the objective that you've set, you, by human nature, just seem to set another one that reaches higher. And that's really what our people do. They constantly look for ways to improve.
Now, did you hold back a few secrets here, or did you give away everything in the book?
No, you always, Rosalie has always said, gee, why didn't you tell about such and such? I said, well, I didn't think about it then. So there's always things that you're reminded of. But, I tried to pick up what I thought would be pertinent, helpful. Mm.
Now, I have to point out that there's some personal stuff in here, too. That, for example, we start with the picture of you on the bearskin rug as a baby. And the Toronto papers picked up on there was a little bit of sex in the book, and it's a pretty wide-ranging thing. Is there anything that you wish, in retrospect now that you can hold the book in your hand and everyone is going to have a copy and everyone you work with, is there anything you wish you hadn't disclosed in the book?
Not really. The lawyers made sure that, whatever things that might have been a little bit off the color was, I was trying not to, I wasn't trying to make us better by putting other people down. I don't think that it means anything. And there are a lot of people in the history of any company that, you could talk about any one of them at great length, because I've met some wonderful people along the way, business associates that I've been partners with for 20, 30, and sometimes 40 years. So I was attempting to be as candid as I could and not trying to unearth anything that might be embarrassing to anybody.
Well, I still have plenty of questions for you, but I do want to open it up if we've got some listeners who want to call in and ask you something maybe I haven't thought of. So if you've got a question for Isadore Sharp, the chairman and founder of Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, and of course the author of the new book, Four Seasons, The Story of a Business Philosophy, give us a call right now at 1-646-595-3135. I won't promise you'll get on, but I'll give it some thought. Now, I want to change gears a little bit. A series of events for you that were kind of life-changing for you and Rosalie and your company began in 1978 when your son Chris died of melanoma. And I know 2 years later, you heard the story of another young man, Terry Fox, who had lost a leg to cancer and was nonetheless running across Canada on an artificial limb to raise money for cancer research. Why did that become so important to you then, and has it remained so important to what you do?
Well, clearly it touched open nerves to see a young man who was really trying to do something that I thought was, remarkable, and who had fought the good battle and won. So it's just somebody you could look to and say, that's somebody you'd like to meet and somebody you'd like to help, which is the way it started. And because he was trying the impossible. I mean, he had trained for a couple of years and then decided what to do is run across the country and on one leg. So, he had a stump on the other. So what he ultimately achieved, doctors and scientists will say it's impossible. The human body cannot withstand. I think if I recall the number, he ran for 144 days and covered 3,400 miles on one leg. And he did that, a marathon a day. Now, that is something that they, statistically say can't happen. But he did it. So I look upon it as there was a purpose. If somebody could do something, there had to be a spiritual inner strength that was for a cause greater than we can think about. And fortunately, that's what's happened, because starting and meeting him and deciding that I would carry on in a manner which which is the reason he started was to raise money for cancer. That now we're going to go into our 29th year, and we'll have raised over $500 million in, I think we've operated in over 50 countries worldwide. So it was, an opportunity of, meeting somebody, and yes, there's no doubt, my Rosalie and I are, obviously, I've never gotten over the loss of our son. So there was a connection with his parents. I could understand and have feeling and empathy the way they felt. So when he lost that battle, I just felt the same way all over again, that we've got to do something to start, not continue what he did, but to at least use what he started as a reason to try to fight this very debilitating disease. So I'm fortunate that I have a company that I could control and say, we're going to do this. And I didn't, and everybody volunteered. It wasn't something that this was part of what they had to do, but everybody comes forward of their own time to help put these runs together. So it's been a a great experience for me personally, but I think everybody in the company has really sort of more or less embraced it and has probably a similar feeling about it.
And just for people who don't know, how widespread is the Terry Fox effect in Four Seasons today? Like you say, this is 29 years later.
Well, at one time, every hotel used to organize the run. Of late, though, we still do the runs, but it's a major foundation now, and the Fox family controls it and keeps the purity of what he wanted. So the control of what people can and can't do sort of restricts exactly how we can use the Terry Fox name. But it still is run worldwide. We get embassies, we get schools. It's big now because it's into the school system. Mm-hmm. So I think it now has momentum that will continue. It just doesn't seem it's getting bigger. You'd think it would die out, but it never did.
And what, in general, is the Four Seasons philosophy towards community involvement and community charity? How does?
Well, we leave it. It's an individual choice. We expect each hotel to be a responsible corporate citizen within their community, so they should be participating in a way that supports their community, both by time and by whatever means we can. So as a company, we have our normal charitable givings in terms of the amounts of money we as a corporation would do, but I think generally the nature of people who join Four Seasons is that they also have that, responsibility to give back to the community because of their good fortune. So I think we've got a normal way of people recognizing that supporting others is part and parcel of our responsibilities.
Now, I'm going to change gears on you again. You stay in, periodically, I believe, you stay in non-Four Seasons hotels around the world from time to time. Is there any property, anyone else on the planet that you can honestly say does luxury or service as well as Four Seasons? Anyone else that you admire in the business that way?
I'm sure there are, individual situations, hotels and other chains that do probably, attempt and probably do it quite well. I don't think there is another company that has it as a consistent mandate that can market it as something that is special. I think every hotel does attempt, and they do, to give good service. It's the consistency of it that really counts, so having something work 75% of the time is not going to be very helpful if you're in that other part when something is... Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
When we were going public, this is going back in 1985, and we were on the roadshow and visiting, small communities to meet with the analysts. We, forget which city it was, but we just rented another hotel room, a meeting room, to make our presentation, and we all, came down the night before because we're having a 7 o'clock meeting and moving, the way every hour you're going somewhere else. And the hotel had set up the meeting room, and our analysts came in, and these people are only there, they're giving you the benefit of a half an hour to an hour max. And the hotel had the wrong setup for our presentation. Now, we couldn't do anything about it. It's too late. So the first question was, well, tell me, what's different about Four Seasons than any other hotel? Why should we be thinking of investing in your company? And I said, well, what I can tell you would be the main difference. And I explained that we came here to present to you what we can show you on a screen. We can't do that now because this setup is not correct. So we've lost the complete benefit of this meeting from a visual point of view. That would never happen in Four Seasons because our people would have been down here the night before to make sure that everything was set up according to our needs. That is the difference. It's fail-safe service. that you can rely upon, and therefore your use of your time is most effective. It's not a luxury that we're selling. It's a practical, useful service that really gives you what you need, and nothing is more valuable than a person's time. And whether it's for pleasure or business. Pleasure even more. You plan for 6 months before you go to a place that you're hoping with the kids going to be a great time. So that is the explanation of everybody's role is important, because you don't know where it is that something might fall between the cracks.
Mm-hmm. I think most people will be surprised, people who haven't followed the company closely and just, I think they'll be surprised that you have two extremely well-known business partners in Four Seasons, Saudi Arabia's Prince Al-Walid and Microsoft founder and, of course, the world's richest man, Bill Gates. Can you tell us a little bit about each man and how they came to own a piece of the Four Seasons?
Well, the Prince has been a partner of mine going back to 1994, when I, at that point, was looking to reorganize my own personal holdings, and he bought 25%, not investing in the company, but 25% of the outstanding shares. Mm-hmm. So we've been partners since that time, and he's been a very strong supporter, building several hotels for Four Seasons to manage, which would be most helpful to us. Bill Gates' company that he uses, or that represents him, it's called Cascade, and that's an investment company. They also were a major shareholder of Four Seasons, have been for many, many years. So when the concept of taking the company private came to me from a third-party investment dealer, subject to conditions that would satisfy my needs of not giving up control, it just worked out that here were the two major investors that said, fine, we like what we've had to date, and that deal slowly came to fruition. So they are, know the company well, have done well by it. Their important aspect of that business deal is that it puts the company in the change of ownership, ensures the continuity and stability of the company for the foreseeable future. Because these, with my family's ownership and their ownership, the company never will be sold. Because these are the type of investors who aren't forced to sell because of having to have a return over a certain number of years. They've truly invested for the very long term. So for people within the company, and for all our hotel owners, they can now look and say Four Seasons' legacy is almost insured to continue as it has in the past, because there won't be a change of ownership. Because my control of the company was such that if something happened to me unexpectedly or the inevitable, that my family would have more than likely had to sell the company. And at that time, it would have been like a jump ball. Who highest bidder might get it, and it could change the complexion of Four Seasons completely. So this was a way of controlling an ownership change that would be for the benefit of everybody.
Of course, a man is judged by the company he keeps, and your company, the company you're keeping in this description is, two of the wealthiest, most successful men in the world. If I started a company tomorrow, I'd get Joe the lawyer down the street, and I'd get Bob, his cousin, down the other direction of the street. So, they're pretty substantial partners that you have here, and I know they certainly get attention when their names come up. We're going to wrap up in just a minute or two, but you kind of made reference to succession. It's certainly a big issue in companies that have big looming personalities such as yourself, who start, run, and sustain them. I I'm recalling that you are probably about 76 now.
77. I was when we met.
77.
Yeah,
wow. So you have in place, I know, executive management, but if there comes a day where you cannot run the company, what will happen?
Well, as a responsible, one of the most responsible positions that I have is to make sure there's continuity of the company's management skills. So we've always, going right back since we were a public company, have always had succession plans in place for every senior executive, both for the unexpected event or for the anticipated retirement event. So we've had many retirements in this company at the very senior level, everybody right directly below me, who've moved up through the company, and their roles have all been filled by people from within the company. Today, it's the third person who's in charge of all the hotel operations worldwide, Jim Fitzgibbon. He's a 30-year veteran, and he is the fourth person who's had this particular position. So the change at the senior levels are the most crucial because that reverberates right down through the company. And we've always been able, and we will continue, that the senior management of this company will always come from within the company, promoted from within. So there will be a seamless transition. As I have put in place today, people who, if I decided to step away or if something happened, will take over the company in the senior roles, and I don't think there will be any change. There'll be a bit of a shock. What will happen? And people will say, let's see. I believe within 6 months, you'll see an organization that will come together and be able to move the company forward just as it has in the past. So succession for a CEO's role must be part of the CEO's responsibility to make sure that there's no shock that would occur as a result of that change. And I've done that. So I remember, I've got an interest in this company that's going to go on indefinitely. So I'm very conscious of making sure that's going to be the right decision.
I understand. And finally, as we kind of wrap up here, because I know you've had a busy day already with the interviews and stuff, tell me about Rosalie, who is, of course, the family's first author with her memoir, Rivka, An Improbable Life. How is she handling your latest amount of fame?
Well, she's a remarkable woman and has helped me a great deal in this book process because she's an exceptionally gifted writer. She wrote her book, every word. So she was very helpful in giving me guidance that, this doesn't sound right, can't you change it? And she would edit the book as we went through it. She takes great joy in any accolades I get. Very real joy. And that is not a put-on. It's something that she has the pleasure of living together and growing up together, that whatever, call it accolades I get or benefits I get, she thoroughly gets that same thrill as if it's to her alone, because we are connected at the hip. So there's absolutely no envy or, thought, because she's very, very strong in her own, self-esteem. And so she's got, when I look at our grandkids, and they're remarkably brilliant. Our youngest grandchild is just graduating this year from McGill, and he's in the top 5% of the school. His sister, who went to the same school, is now in second year med, and she said, look, I was in the top 10, and she's in medical school. So I say that those kids inherited Rosalie's genes in terms of their intellect, because she's got that capacity of being a what I call a unique personality of a very creative person with an exceptionally high IQ. So she's quite satisfied with herself.
I suspect that a few of the kids must have collected your athletic skills, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, I would give them credit for that. That's true.
Well, folks, you can find Isadore Sharp's book, Four Seasons, The Story of a Business Philosophy, in great bookstores everywhere, or you can order it online at mrmedia.com or amazon.com. And at least once in life, stay at a Four Seasons hotel or resort. You owe it to yourself. There's nothing like it. You can make reservations at, of course, fourseasons.com. I got to throw that in there. Just no one asked me to do that. But I've enjoyed the time that I got to spend with you and chatting with you today. And Mr. Sharp, please give my best to Rosalie and all the people in the company around you who I got to meet. And thanks so much for giving us so much time and joining us on Mr. Media today.
Bob, I appreciate you taking this time to sort of help me along in getting the book out into the public's mind. And thank you, and I appreciate so much the work you did in terms of spending that time to interview and help me and putting some anecdotes in that book that made it come to life.
Well, that's very kind of you. I appreciate that. But again, my pleasure. Good talking to you, and continued good luck and good wishes to your family.
Thank you very much. Bye.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye. Folks, for more great business-related interviews, surf over to our main website, www.mrmedia.com. That's where you can listen to my earlier conversations with Guy Kawasaki of Apple Computer and Alltop, Dave Hagan of Boingo Wireless, Barry Liebert of Mzinga, Ed Drosty, one of the co-founders of Hooters, Laurel Tooby of Media Bistro, Alan Levy of our very own Blog Talk Radio, and many more. Please think about writing an online review of Mr. Media, casting a vote for Mr. Media, or marking Mr. Media as one of your favorites. Whether you listen on Blog Talk Radio, Pointer Online, MySpace, Facebook, NetVibes, Multiply, Zanga, Digital Journal, Friendster, Orkut, Bebo, Tagged, iGoogle, Yahoo, Podcast Pickle, Vox, Folio, Mediafly, Podfeed.net, Blueberry, Zencast, or Odeo. That's right, you can find us pretty much everywhere. You can also listen with a piece of string and a tin can in many locations. Subscribe to Mr. Media in iTunes, and you'll never miss a show. Just search Mr. Media Interviews within the podcast section of iTunes and click the free subscribe button. It's that easy. If you've got an idea for a guest, email me directly at bob@andelman.com. That's ANDELMAN. You can also follow me on Facebook or on Twitter, www.twitter.com/Andelman. Thanks so much for joining us today. Always appreciate when you give up a piece of your day to spend it with good old Mr. Media. Thanks for listening.